On this episode of Intent Topics, we're going to talk about starting conversations in the cannabis industry. Logan, how you doing today?
Good. How are you, man?
Doing awesome. I'm really excited about this topic. I feel like we talk about it a lot. And so I want to put it on a podcast and share with the world because we're constantly talking about it. I like the idea of laying it down.
Cool. Yeah, let's do it.
Cool. So, little backstory here. So at Union, we have a large client that was in the cannabis space, still is in the cannabis space, and it's a tech company. And I guess in my perspective, I knew there was going to be unique challenges due to the cannabis industry. For example, Google won't let you buy advertising, and Facebook as well. And there's content that you can't display, and you can't. There's challenges around emailing folks directly. There's age challenges. There's state by state laws, right? So working around that. We still devised a full-scale marketing plan and, implemented it. And, obviously I have the inbound background, so it's heavily weighted towards that. But, you pretty much proved this, but we found that it was more about the outbound outreach, right? And right. Calling people and less of the, if you build it, they will come. There's an element of that, but boy, we really found success by calling out and working outbound strategies, right?
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah. Can you talk to, what you've been doing there and how that's going and what you're finding?
Yeah, man. So one of the most difficult places sort of starting to really like build this outbound strategy in the cannabis space was there's no, the Zoom infos, Discover orgs, all these different contact databases. There's not a lot of coverage for them, right? So sort of organizing the space, and it's very fast moving, right? So it's constantly changing. The minute that I feel like I've got a pretty complete database right. for us here at Union, all of a sudden, I'm talking to somebody else inside of Union, and it's like, did you see this brand? It's like, no, but we're working 40 hours a week on it. And so,
brands are popping up out of the ground. They're merging, consolidating, splitting, changing management, changing names. It's this in one state, that in another state. It's very hard to keep track of. That's a good point you make. Yeah.
And so then from there, identifying things like decision makers and identifying the right sort of entry vector into a company, super challenging. What was cool, I think, to like fast forward is like once you do start the conversation, we'll talk about how it was totally worth it, right? Because everybody's excited to be in the space, right? And people are not, the people who are trying to start those conversations, trying to be in the space, are excited to be there. And there's there's a sense of camaraderie that will disappear when the real big money comes in. Like it's talked about now, but it's like it's not that big yet. But like once there's like super consolidation and commodification, all that kind of stuff, it will be fun. So it's really an exciting time to be in the space. Because the people there are the sort of the original people, or kind of like maybe the third wave of it. So yeah.
Yeah. And it's interesting how much, there's this spirit of everyone trying to help each other, and it's competition, but like, it's also competition against like the regulations not changing so that everybody can continue to do what they're doing. So they kind of, it's like this, we're all in this together kind of thing.
Yeah.
I don't recall seeing that much outside of this industry.
Well, if you think about it, like, for the in like MBA speak, you got Michael Porter's 5 Forces, right? And so, there's a multitude of different factors that can erode at your profitability, can erode at your growth, and in a highly competitive marketplace. Obviously the sort of other members of the market, your direct competitors are the big sort of eroders of profit. You're in price wars and all this kind of stuff. I don't see that from a brand perspective right now in the cannabis space. The major sort of factors are like, well, we've got to redo all of our packaging because this regulation just changed. Right. And starting conversations and working in a sales role and that kind of thing, we didn't have a lot of competition. There's some, but like all of a sudden what we're fighting against is like, wow, internally that company just got thrown into chaos by no fault of their own. But California just passed this legislation that's in effect, very fast. They don't have the same lobby. So
you got bigger fish to fry than any phone call that's coming in, right? It's just survival mode.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, that's fun and frustrating, very frustrating at the same time. And so I think that's something that for companies that are not currently in the cannabis space or have been running a cannabis strategy for, 3, 6, 9 months, it's a lesson that I've learned that, that's not long enough to tell if you're a good fit in the industry. If you're enjoying being there, it's a year, it's a 2-year kind of thing. And you gotta fight the battles with these brands.
Yeah. So when you are having conversations, what's the kind of demeanor of the people on the other end?
Listen, if you like the cannabis space, I think it's easy to be in it, right? But if you're just in it to make money, people can see
right through
you. So like in the CBD space, which I think is very tangential. It's not that long ago that we had the Farm Bill passed. It was after we started our outreach. So, and for the listeners like that sort of made it federally legal, that hemp is a federally legal, or CBD based hemp. Maybe you can kind of go into that a little bit later, but so it kind of lifted a lot of the federal stigma around CBD that's derived from hemp, correct?
Yeah, and it allowed a lot of brands to become national brands, right? And a lot of them were sitting on the sidelines waiting.
Exactly. And so, one of the stories that's told a lot in the CBD space is, they had a family member who was ill. They were entrepreneurial. They started to realize that like CBD was something that could help this family member with cancer or whatever, or some illness. And here's this person between the kind of archetype is like 25 to 40, like somebody who's old enough that they're probably in a position where like this is making a big impact on their life. And so now they are building this brand. This happens all the time.
You hear it every day,
right?
Yeah.
And so if you're taking this like very, it's the most pure, like obviously people want to make money by starting a business, right? But like, the Simon Sinek, it's becoming a cliche, like start with why. Now we're really able to start that business. If you're trying to just sell them something, you're screwed, right? So that I like the cannabis industry, you like the cannabis industry. So it's been easy for us to have these conversations because, whether we use it or not, it's an opportunity. It's probably wrong that it's federally illegal. There's the so many different like drug crises, all this kind of stuff that could probably be, avoided. So yeah,
that's frustrating, but it's amazing how much true authenticity there is. And I think a lot of it is because, so many people in the industry have that story of a family member or themselves, and that the business is driven with a lot of like love and compassion, probably even emotion.
Right.
And we found that leads to just as meaningful conversations when you're talking to these people, right? Like you can connect.
Right.
We're not telling you like a server box or something, right? This is like a lot more meaningful.
Yeah. And like, on the THC, you know, just straight like marijuana side, like you've got people who probably grew up with it. The consumer that a lot of the brands that we talk to are targeting are not like 18 or 17 or 20-year-old stoners, right? Like this is not the college kid, you know, cannabis industry. This is like, this is like, you know, sophisticated professionals who want high quality, who want to, you know, so the other side is the passion is like, all right, like I want to know what I'm putting into my body. I want to, you know, I want it to be like classy. You know, these are people who spend more than, you know, a lot of times $20 on a bottle of wine, right? Who understand the difference in what what they're eating, what they're drinking, etc. So it's no different in the marijuana space. So like that passion, even though it might not be health driven, is still there. And it's very apparent that like you want it to be cool to, you know, pull out this like beautifully packaged, you know, sort of marijuana joint and, you know, smoke it at a party with your friends that, you know, all make 6 figures a year, that kind of thing. So
I observed kind of 2 tracks of consumers. I'm sure there's more, but there's one of people that were already consuming, have been consuming. Now it's just like easier to purchase, right?
Yeah.
But they still have the same questions when you go into the retailer, like what's what, which one's going to make me feel which way, yada, yada. And then I think there's another, you know, cohort of consumers who it's just like, because it's like being more acceptable, their personal stigmas changed a bit around it. And they're like, oh, okay, this isn't so bad. This isn't, you know, reefer madness and all the propaganda, right? Like, I can have like a light dose product and maybe, you know, enjoy it on a recreational level.
Right.
You know, and that's just like a new opportunity for them when before it was just kind of like wine or beer or something.
Yeah. Yeah. And so when you come back to how do we message in the space, you know, you can't fake it. Right. But I would say that, say you're just like a label printer, right? And say you wanted to, you see the opportunity and you want to support these brands, and you think that it's you know a good sort of vertical to go into, but you're not passionate about marijuana, consuming it. Go to a conference, the enthusiasm is infectious, right? You don't have to go, you know, consume it if you don't want to, but like be a supporter of the industry. Yeah. And it will be profitable. I think that's the thing is, you know, you don't have to be taking this stuff in order to realize like, oh, there's recreational opportunities, there's medicinal opportunities. And if I support these people in their passion, might not be mine, but you know, that's where you get off. So
speaking of, you know, events, I attended the Hall of Flowers, which is an event in Santa Rosa, California. And I did not know what to expect walking in the door. And I was very surprised to see that it was an incredibly, you know, professional event, right? I was expecting a bit of a Grateful Dead lot, you know, and it was completely not that. These are professional people that were very enthusiastic about what they were producing and selling, and the camaraderie was incredible. And everyone was kind of, I don't know, there's just this in this together, in a maturity around, or professionalism around it that I was surprised. There people weren't consuming, right? There's no shenanigans, right? These are just people growing their businesses, right? And it's a brand new space, and it was a local event, so it was all California people, so they all kind of play in the same, you know, playground,
right?
And I was within a few minutes, I felt way more comfortable with what I had walked into, right? And I felt comfortable walking up to anyone and talking about their products and learning about what they're doing and where it's from, and the different, you know, methods of consumption. And it was very interesting. And I was thoroughly impressed with that, little swath of the industry overall.
Yeah.
So.
It's really exciting. And so, when we talk about how to start conversations and how to grow a business within the industry, this is where, like, I don't think advertising is really what needs to be done. I think it is really like start those conversations in an authentic way, with outreach. Obviously networking has been very effective, but if you don't have a network, really going out and seeking out brands that are interesting, finding the contact information, reaching out to them, understand that you're reaching out cold. You might need to explain yourself, but at the end of the day, people want to talk about this stuff. So if you're authentic, you'll be able to stay in the conversation long enough that it really starts to make sense. So I think it can't be profit first. It needs to be relationships. It needs to be network. But there's enough money to go around in this industry that, really sort of identifying what your strengths are and how you can support these people's passions as they grow their business. You're going to help them grow. So,
another piece of advice from that event I was at Hall of Flowers, as it pertains to marketing and sales, obviously. Gary Vee spoke, and I was pleasantly surprised it wasn't like the same old Gary Vee talk, right? But one of the things he said is that podcasting is probably one of the most important things you could do in that industry, due to a lot of the restrictions on advertising stuff, and a podcast being one of the most organic ways to get your content out there.
Interesting.
I thought that was inspiring. Obviously, here we are. But the other thing is there's a lot of news, there's a lot of press, but comparatively, there's not that much content out there. I mean, this is such a new industry. So I thought that was a compelling point. So I would recommend that to any brand or business, in the industry, trying to figure out what to do with their marketing. I'd just hit record and start talking.
Yeah, definitely. And we talk to the brands. There's a lot of companies that have great sort of offerings that could help the brands grow. And I think talking about that, creating content, et cetera, in those spaces, is going to be, incredibly valuable, not just because of what they're doing, what your brand is doing, but because you don't know how that's going to sort of snowball, right. 6 months later, you've got a little like network that you didn't even know about that respects what you're doing, So,
yeah, it's funny. And I've met a couple people that have been advocating in this industry long before we got where we are today, 15, 16, 17 years. And I mean, look at the perseverance that some of these people stuck through because of what they believed in. And they're actually doing really, really well right now because of it. Right.
Yeah.
And you applaud the, the grind, the hustle, and they stuck it out. And some people are really getting paid out on it. Right. And that ties back to the authenticity piece, right? Like there's so many people flocking to the industry because they're seeing it, and it's nice to see that some of these people that have stuck it out are finding success.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. Cool, Logan. Well, let's wrap up this episode of Intent Topics. I'm Chris Vaddis.
And I'm Logan Kelly. Thanks everybody for listening. Please give us a 5-star rating and a follow on whatever podcast app you listen on, and we will see you next time. Thanks a lot.
Take care.